Everyone, and welcome to an episode of Vertical Living, in which we attempt to learn to live out the very faith that we lift up. The Jesus that we believe in, we now take who he is in us and live him out in our life. You know, one of the things that is so critical for us in our spiritual health, emotional health, and even mental health is trust. It's important that we learn how to trust and have that in our relationships. Years ago, when I was doing youth ministry, it was one of the experiences that we would walk students through at a summer camp. We had an experience called a trust fall, and we would line up students in a line facing each other close by and have one student at the end that we would ask them to put a blindfold on, cross their arms, and then fall back into the arms of the others who would then catch them. And it was a great exercise in trust because it meant the one who was falling back had to put complete trust in the rest of the group to know that they were going to be safe when they fell back. And we found it to be an exercise that really brought great cohesiveness and strength to the relationships, because when there's trust, then you open the door to all sorts of growth and maturity. Whenever there's trust, then there can be open communication. When there's trust, there can be great vulnerability and honesty, even in sharing weaknesses and faults. And there can be open movement forward in the relationship. You can go somewhere with it. There's no more pretending or putting on a mask. There's forward movement in the relationship. So every relationship requires trust, whether it be a marriage or in parenting, on a job, and even in our walk with God. It is essential that we have trust. If there is no trust between us and God and our trust of him, then it cuts off those same very truths that are necessary: open communication, vulnerability, and movement forward. So trust is essential in relationships, but trust is essential for us as a person as well. Trust gives me the ability to be secure and stable. And if I am unable to trust others around me, if I'm unable to express trust toward God, then I am at a place where I am unstable emotionally. I'm all over the page with my emotions. I'm unstable even mentally. I'm filled with panic and anxiety and depression. And I'm unstable in my will, my decision making. I make poor decisions and get involved in wrong habits because I'm not at a place of stability in my life. So trust is essential in relationships, and trust is essential for each of us personally. So when we turn to the Bible, we find a lot of passages that deal with the need for trust, and those who at times lost it with other people, did not have the trust that they needed, and times when people developed trust toward God, even in some situations where they had lost trust toward people. The character in the Old Testament, David, is one of those. He is a man who had many that once called him friend, but many who also walked away from him and became deceitful and became dangerous to him. He lost trust in them. And the Bible tells the story of some of the days and months and years of distrust that he walked in and the pain of that. The Psalms provide much of this picture into David's heart and his soul and what he walked through as he had to have his trust rebuilt. And Psalm 18 is one of those psalms that gives us a glimpse into David's heart when he was older in life and he was looking back over some things that he had experienced. And he looks back specifically in Psalm 18 at how God became the one he trusted when he lost trust in everyone else. And specifically in the first 3 verses, I think we see there 10 names for God that David experienced. They became more than just a word on a page, more than just a name he heard, but some experience that he had with God that forever changed him and helped rebuild his trust. And this is essential for us, especially if we have walked in some situations where we've had our trust broken, where we've been burned. And it can happen. It can happen in business dealings where we enter a relationship with someone and they don't uphold their end of the bargain, and we are burned, and we end up losing even financially in the situation. It can make us leery of wanting to be involved again in a business relationship. It can happen in friendships where one person that we trusted deeply and became honest with and told some things that we might not have told anyone else, and all of a sudden those get used against us, or someone gossips or takes that information and gossips about us, we lose trust. We get burned in that relationship, and we find it difficult to trust again. It can happen in a marriage relationship. It can happen with our children. It can even happen in church, where someone gets involved and engaged and active, and they find themselves hurt. In the midst of the very place they thought they could trust, they end up losing trust. And these can be very painful, make it difficult for us to maneuver through life. And it can even happen in situations where we are uncertain of the outcome. Take, for example, the crisis of the virus in our day today. So much information, there's so many perspectives, so many ideas, and then being able to walk back out into an environment and culture after there's been such threat can be difficult. It can be difficult to regain trust. So I want us to look at Psalm 18. We're going to do that for the next following 5 episodes of Vertical Living. And we're going to see through these names of God how we can rebuild trust when it has been broken. When we've lost our ability to trust, God says, I will be the one who will restore, rebuild, and heal you. So let's look at these verses, Psalm 18, verses 1, 2, and 3. I want to read the subscription that comes before it. This is a part that we don't have for all of the Psalms, but in Psalm 18, we actually have this description about the Psalm written before verse 1. That gives us great insight into what David was experiencing. And here's what it says. It says, he writes, to the chief musician, a psalm of David, the servant of the Lord. So we know exactly who wrote it. And it tells us when. Who spoke to the Lord the words of this song on the day that the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies, and from the hand of Saul. So we know that David wrote this at the time he was delivered. In other words, after he had seen victory after a long period of being pursued and hunted and threatened, and he went through so much time of distrust. Here he is on the other end looking back, and it says that David said these things. Verse 1, I will love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my strength in whom I will trust, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. Now today, I want us just to think about verse 1 and verse 3. We'll come back and get verse 2 in the next 5 episodes and the 10 names mentioned there. But verse 1 and 3 tell us something about the power of rebuilt trust and what God wants to do in us. Because after we've been burned and after we have lost trust, God begins a process of healing us. And He wants to get us to a place where trust is not just a word that we say. It's not just a word we express even about our faith or about others, but it's something that we truly know. It's a word that we are very familiar with because it comes from the very vulnerable, intimate parts of our life, where in those places where we feel the most insecure and uncertain, we trust God. It's to be a word and a truth for us that is not just something we're forced into, where trust is not just something we have to do, but it's something we choose to do. And the way David describes it here, it is so moving to him, that this trust has so transformed him that it takes him to a place where he not only trusts, but he says, I love you, O Lord, my strength. This is a place where trust is turned all the way to love. And out of full release and full love, there is great trust. And David has that developed in his life. But the other thing it says in verse 3 is that this trust becomes so deep, so immense, that David gains complete confidence. And that's really what trust does for us. When we lack trust and we lack confidence, we are insecure and uncertain. But when we have trust, which is what God wants to take David to and take us to, he comes to a place of just utter boldness and confidence. So great a confidence that he ends up saying, I know I shall be saved from my enemies. God, I know you are going to deliver me. That is great trust. In the face of all that he sees, he trusts the one he can't see. He says, I will trust you, and you will deliver me from all of my enemies. So today, for whatever enemies are pursuing you, whether they be fear, guilt, whether they be regret, comparison, jealousy, anger, out of control behavior, depression, anxiety, whatever they might be, whatever enemies are pursuing you today, God wants to develop in you such great trust that you will trust him, love him, and have the complete confidence of knowing he will be the one who delivers you. He will be the one who strengthens you. And you can get to a place where, though you might have been burned in the past, you can be bold in the future and have great confidence and trust. I hope you'll join us for the next 5 episodes as we see the power of the names of God to build in us trust once again. So join us next time for Vertical Living.